It's my pleasure now to expand our table conversation here to the entire room. As an artist and advocate and activist, Derrick Ashong is literally the voice of a new generation. Whether heard on the radio or in the eloquent expression of his thoughts on then Senator Barack Obama, seen in one of the most viewed YouTube videos of 2008. In his music as leader of the emerging band Soulfège, or acting in Steven Spielberg's Amistad, this Harvard-educated talent has founded myriad ways to inspire, engage, and activate young people with positive messages for social change. It's my pleasure to introduce this afternoon's keynote speaker, Derrick Ashong.
Thank you very much all, first of all, for inviting me, for allowing me to speak, during dessert. Because it means that most of you are largely full, but you're going to eat a little chocolate because it's good decorum, and you won't quite be sleepy enough yet that you. But you also won't be so focused on your main course that you'll miss what I have to say. And hopefully it'll be worth it. Now, I did make a promise to the Secretary of State that I would speak for as long as possible, as slowly and in as monotone a fashion as I can, so as to keep you here for no reason. No, I'm not going to do that. I've been asked to be interesting and informative, so I'm going to do my best. And what I want to do, what I thought I would do, is give you a little bit of background on myself, as we were just discussing here, because some of you are probably looking at like, okay, who invited the baby-faced kid to come and talk about these important issues? And it's always interesting when you come in as a young person. I'm not that young anymore, but thanks to my mom and dad, I still look a lot younger than I am, and I hope this will continue for some decades to come. But a lot of times you'll come in and they'll be like, well, it's not a PhD. I dropped out of grad school, sorry for all the academics in the room. And I mean, I'm not really sure, like, what's he gonna say, what's he gonna share, how is he gonna edify me? I've been a practitioner, I've been doing this for 30 years. Has this kid even been around that long? Looks like one of my students. And so that puts one in a situation where it's like, okay, you've gotta up your game in order to just have a basic level of acceptance by people who actually know what they're talking about. So, I'm going to tell you something that I know well, better actually than anyone in this room, and that is about myself. This way I'm on safe territory and you won't be disappointed. And hopefully in talking a little bit about my experience as a person, as a citizen, as an artist, it will help to plant some seed with you about what I mean when I think of a new generation and how we should think about the power of the arts moving forward. So, I am Derrick Nana Kwesi Abaka Ashong. I was born in Ghana, West Africa. My friends call me DNA. They call me DNA largely because that sounds a lot better than the full initials, which is Dinka. So DNA is what a lot of people call me. I was born in West Africa. I moved to Brooklyn, New York when I was a kid. First, anyone has been to Ghana? All right, okay. I gotcha. Not quite yet. One person Ghana, two people to Ghana. Anyone else? Hold your hand up, hi. All right, oh, we got crew, awesome. Akwaba, all of you, welcome. When I was 3, 4 years old, I moved to Brooklyn, New York. Anybody from Brooklyn? Of course. And you know, Brooklynites, they're never like, yeah, assertive, concrete jungle. When I was 8 years old, I moved to Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Anyone from Saudi? All right, one. There's two of us. When I was, let me see, actually 8, I moved to Saudi. 12, I moved to Doha, Qatar. Anyone from Qatar? Okay, see, this is the cosmopolitan crowd. I love it. And finally, when I was 16, I moved to a suburban high school in Voorhees, New Jersey. Anybody? Okay. Wonderful. So this is one of probably a handful of organizations I've ever spoken to or speeches I've ever done where there's been somebody who has been to all the places that I grew up in, right? For a kid like me, when somebody would ask, where are you from? It actually required a process in order to determine the answer. The process starts like this. First they ask, oh, yeah, Derrick, oh, cool. So where are you from? And you think, okay, who am I speaking to? How cosmopolitan are they? What's their particular background? Which thing will they comprehend? Do they mean they really want to know where I'm really from? Or do they just kind of want to know where I live? Or are they just sizing me up for reason X, Y, and Z? And based upon that particular ascertainment, in the space of less than half a second, I will say, I'm from Brooklyn. But it was a big deal, and I had to have this question of identity, questions of identity all the time as a kid, trying to explain to people where I'm from, who am I, where am I from, what does it mean to be me? And I remember my mother was very interesting, the way she tried to make sure that I remembered my roots, my culture, my heritage, this concept of where I'm from, because for her, it mattered. There was something powerful about knowing yourself and your place in the world. And one of the things that she would do is she would get us together and we would sing songs all the time when I was a kid. And it was funny because, growing up in Saudi Arabia, there were two TV stations at that time. There was one in English, one in Arabic. Both of them would show the prayer call in its entirety 5 times a day. So, no Desperate Housewives going on. And so we didn't spend a lot of time in front of the two. We would hang out, we would read, we would talk to my mom, and she would sing to us all the time. And this one song I'll never forget that she used to sing to me. And it was very beautiful, and it said, Yenera asaseni, eyambo dindin mayeng, mojana nananum shwegun yadeto homayeng. Edumene wunsusu, seyebe yebiatiaso, niemdien trason konton granin yopese min kuminya, edien bremundo mia, saseun doatumse. Omano sebe yeyo, omano serin yeyo, Eyese na hose, o manfo bran betre, o mano sebe yeyo, o mano serin yeyo. Eyese na hose, o manfo bran betre. Yenera assassini. This is our land. It is a great treasure that was bought for us with the blood of our ancestors. It is now time for you and I to do our part for our motherland. Let us not let selfishness nor lack of love for country come in between us. Whether this land will succeed or whether this land will fail, the life of the people will show. This is how my mom helped me to understand and remember who I am. Now, it was interesting because as a kid, growing up in all these different environments, I could never fit in. It was absolutely impossible. Because as soon as you figure out what is natural and cool and kind of vibes with everyone else in a given environment, you make a switch. You go somewhere completely different. You figure out what is acceptable in Flatbush. You got it on lock. 8 years old, cool as you can be. You move to Saudi Arabia. Whole different ballgame. Then at 12, Saudi, doing my thing, American International School, getting a scoop of things, figuring out how to flow. Next thing you know, I move to Doha. And I go to a British international school. And I always love to tell a story about how little things let you know that you're different, right? Sometimes we take it for granted. If you grow up in a community with people that are similar to yourself, you sort of all vibe and connect, you take certain things for granted. But when you grow up with people who are radically different or come from a different perspective or in a community that is primarily populated by expatriates, so most of the people you meet on any given day are foreigners from that another land, not that land you live in. Like imagine if everyone in Delaware, the majority of the people living here, were actually from Nevada. Right? That's how I grew up. And so little things let you know that you're different. I love to share this story of my first day of math class. I know it's an art conference, but I'm going to go for the sciences first. First day of math class, I had a teacher, a very tall gentleman, tall Scotsman, with a bald dome, with a crowning, a red crown of flaming red hair, wiry muscles, the whole nine. He looked like Groundskeeper Willie from The Simpsons. And the first day of school, he looks at us all and he says, "All right, pull out your jotters." And I'm looking at him and I'm like, And he's looking at us and everyone's rustling around in their bags trying to do something, and I'm standing there. And he looks at me and he's like, "Derrick, pull out your jotter." And I'm like, "Excuse me, sir, first of all, I don't really know you like that. My parents had a talk with me. Secondly, what's a jotter?" And he replies, "It's a book." I'm like, "Oh, okay, that helps." Now, by this time, everyone's gone into their bags and they've gone out and they've pulled out their books, and I realized that a jotter is a book. And more specifically, it's a notebook. A notebook. Little things let you know that you were different. Right? So for myself, the way that I found to articulate an identity that I could feel comfortable with was through music. I did it through music because I felt that it spoke to me. It was had a sense of clarity about how I saw the world, but it also enabled me to reach out to other people. And I was not a kid who had the benefit of a wonderful arts education, frankly. I came to Brooklyn at a time in the late 1970s when you actually had, as I was mentioning to members of my table, a significant cutting of funding for music programs in these schools. So a lot of kids at that period grew up not learning instruments, right? This is the part of the birth of hip-hop. You couldn't learn to play an instrument, so you created instruments. You became an instrument in some occasions. When I moved to the Middle East, it was only then, at 8 years of age, that I learned to play the recorder in my new school. And then I got to move on up to the clarinet. When I was 12, I moved to Doha, and again, I didn't have a band anymore, so I had to put away those wind ensemble instruments. But I'd been going around learning and playing on, plunking around on people's pianos, so my parents got me piano lessons. Now, any pianists here? Few. 12 years old is very late to start classical piano. Most of my friends who played at the time had started around 4 or 5. A couple of the geniuses when they were 3. Right? So I'm almost a decade behind the curve at this point. And I remember I loved music and I would play. My sister would go to piano lessons and she'd come back and she didn't want to practice. I would come back and I would play and play and play. Of course, I wouldn't play the stuff I was supposed to play. I'd just be playing along, playing and doing something. And then I started to actually learn and imbibe the music. And I'll never forget this day when my piano teacher was teaching me this song. We were working on it. I was sort of plunking away, and she got a phone call. And she had to go off and take the call. And, a friend of mine had given me this piece of music. It was Mozart's Eine kleine Nacht music. And I thought it was so gorgeous. It was amazing. But I didn't understand all the notes and the way it ran, and my teacher wasn't teaching me. So I started looking things up and getting these books and asking some of the other folks. And I just started teaching myself to play Mozart. And so by the time one day, about 13 years old, the piano teacher, we've been in class for a year, and she comes in, and she goes out to take this call, and she comes back, and after a year of piano, she hears me from the other room playing Mozart. She comes back, she's like, "What the hell?" She's like, "How did you learn that?" I was like, "My friend gave me the music." She's like, "And you taught yourself?" I was like, well, yeah, it's a little harder than, when I was playing clarinet because it's multiple parts at the same time, but I've been working on it. She said, from now on, we'll play whatever you want. And what wound up happening is I got this idea that, okay, I can play whatever I want. When I went back to the United States, I kept playing. I joined a jazz ensemble. When I went to I joined an a cappella group in high school, one that we created because there wasn't one in our high school. When I went to college, I joined a choir, and I learned to write arrangements for that choir. Then I studied under a jazz professional singer. I wanted to learn how to sing better like a good person who had beautiful vocals. And she was like, well, you've done a lot of stuff with writing music. This is interesting. So she started teaching me about arranging and writing, and I kept writing more and more songs, and then I graduated, and I apprenticed myself to a professor at Berklee School of Music. I was like, I just graduated with a degree from Harvard. I can't afford to go back to college. I just want to learn, so can I follow you around? Can I do stuff and this and this and that? I started hanging out with the guys who taught the musicians I used to play with, and I just started learning how to make what was in my head a reality. And I ultimately learned how to write, produce, arrange. My senior year of high school, I took time off to act in Steven Spielberg's Amistad. I came back after asking tons of questions of all the artists I met there. I came and I wrote a musical for my senior thesis, which was summa cum laude and won a bunch of academic awards, as well as selling out virtually every night that we did it. And it was all because I had this idea that music could convey a sense of me to the world. Me, a kid who no one could understand because no one had shared my life experience. When people ask me to talk about the arts and the power of the arts, it's really easy to get up and say, arts are beautiful, arts are powerful, and we should all realize that. But you guys already know that. You know that the arts have meaning. You know that they do something good in life. But what is it that other people need to know in order for them to value and realize the import and the impact of artistry in our lives? My career has gone in so many different directions. I did go back to school. I went to grad school. I studied ethnomusicology and African American studies again at Harvard because I'm a company man. I dropped out because I felt like I was doing stuff that my department didn't quite see the value in. I was looking at trends in technology, the open source software movement, and looking at how you could take those ideas of intellectual property and map them onto ideas of an open source culture movement. And what that would mean for creating multilateral flows of content between societies. So you don't just have one Western hegemonic paradigm putting stuff out there into the world, but you have the world speaking back, and you are fusing ideas and concepts to be what could be something new, right? That was my academic work. But it didn't just come from, thinking, sitting around in the library, talking about these issues. It came from my own life experience and the fact that I was an African kid that grew up in other places. And my whole life was trying to bridge that gap between societies. People over here, people over there. How do I show my vision when I stand in the middle with legs astride the Atlantic? And there was one example that musically meant so much to me. It was another song that my mother used to sing to me, old West African classic called Sweet Mother. Has anyone ever heard Sweet Mother? Yeah, my man from Liberia, right? It's a very simple song, the most popular in the history of African music. If you ask virtually anyone from the continent, particularly West Africa, they know Sweet Mother. And it's just very simple. It goes, sweet mother, I no go forget you, the way you suffer for me, oh. Sweet mother, oh, sweet mother, oh. When I no chop, my mother no go chop. When I no sleep, my mother no go sleep. She know they tire, oh, sweet mother. I no go forget this suffer when you suffer for me, yeah, yeah. Sweet mother, ah, sweet mother, oh. And we all learn this. And the real version of the song much, much faster. It's like really funky and you dance to it. So that's how we do. But I'm just giving you the basic idea. And I was growing up, I was like, I love that song, I love that song, I love that song. I really want to interpret it in a way that fits my own cultural perspective, my own life standing astride these worlds. And so I did my own version that said, 1, 2 for the cool and you, we rocker. 3, 4 when you're hot for more, I give you. 5 and 6 for the lyrical mix. Your DNA will flip these scripts with an African twist. Mi mami ke mi kajo yak patashi mi. Eke kyong beshi malu tweke hambo no banuni shi dank benin. Lushi mi mami yi mi lele. E womi ne ke mi kafona dina. Look at me. Gromana rocker crying to Trini. Still never met to Umana Stella Ashi. African queen. That's who me so henua. Be praised Jah for all the greatness that form me, mommy, Lord have his mercy. Look who taught a boy to be born. Black woman, me treasure more dilly than go. Me say, you know, the root is where the tree they keep it so. Except no substitute, yo, for the truth. Or that she told Abanyan. Safo wabu no pe. One kind of some for the child to grow wise. He must learn to listen. So here then, no man's army, no riches, no pay could take my love from my mama away. Sweet mother, I no go forget you, the way you suffer, where you suffer for me, you sweet mother, oh, sweet mother, oh. This song remake that we did, thank you. We created the remake. I took these ideas of open source culture that I was thinking about in grad school and writing about, and I actually figured out a little strategy, and we released it back home in Ghana. And in the first month of release, we charted number 4 in the country. R. Kelly, Usher, Beyonce, then me. Meanwhile, I'm kicking it at the library on campus while this is happening. Then it got picked up in South Africa. Then it got picked up in Jamaica on RETV. Then next thing you know, it's airing continent-wide and got picked up in the BBC World Service and then MTV Africa. Within 4 months, we're airing in 50-something different countries around the world, based upon a creative perspective and an academic theory put into practice. So I dropped out of grad school. I got recruited by a big music producer by the name of Dave Stewart, who was one half of the Eurythmics with Annie Lennox. He's the guy who wrote Sweet Dreams, etc., sold 100 million records. I went to work for him to help him launch music and digital businesses. Spent some cool time doing that, had a lot of fun, it was great. Got recruited by Harpo to actually develop a radio show around art and politics and society and how our next generation thought about things. So I was the baby face on Oprah Radio, along with Gayle King, Dr. Oz, Laura Berman, Oprah, and me. Then I got recruited last year by Al Jazeera English to launch a project this spring in April that used social media and looked at how technology was influencing broadcast media and how you could give a bigger voice to people around the world by creating a program that was fully and truly interactive. So this year, we built the first global television show where the audience decide what gets covered and the audience gets to interview Ambassador X live via Twitter, etc., while it's broadcast in 300 million homes worldwide. Most people in the US don't see it, but everyone else does, right? And so my life and my career has been one of thinking about how is it that you give people a voice? Because when I was growing up, my voice was the only one that could possibly articulate to people who I was, because I really was something a little bit different. So when people talk to me about the power of arts, or they ask me about what's the power of the arts, it's not just that art itself is good in and of itself, which it is. It's undeniable. It's beautiful, it's powerful, it's meaningful, it gets in you. I always say that artistry in general is human communication taken to the highest levels, right? In the culture I come from, it's not simply entertainment. It's not simply something peripheral to society. It's in everything we do. I speak a tonal language. Does anyone know what I mean when I say tonal language? Few people. Okay, I'll explain. A tonal language means that, well, I'll give you an example. Let's say you say, there's Kristen, do you know her? If I say, inlele, it means I know her. If I say, inlele, it means I don't know her. Inlele, yes, I know her. Inlele, no, I don't know her. You still with me? So, for us, it's not just what you say. It's literally how you say it. When you hear about West African talking drums, that's not a joke. Where I come from, they really do speak. If I hear a percussionist playing, and this is me who's grow up in Brooklyn and not even go with the language, but I know if I hear a guy playing brum 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 odomankoma brum 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 wombra pro 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 wombra pro 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 come in numbers. To this day, if you listen to the news, they have this thing that plays on TV when you hear it's like winimini kasa 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 winimini kasa 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 kasa. You and I must speak. You and I must speak the news. Right? When we talk about talking drums, it's not a metaphor. It's not a concept. It's literally a way of communicating. So to me, artistry, music in particular, it's not just a theory. It's not just entertainment. It is human communication taken to the highest levels. And for me, music has always been the most powerful of those. And I say it not just because I'm a musician and I'm biased, which I am, but also because there's a fundamental difference about music. See, let's say that you go to the Louvre and you're looking at a wonderful Rembrandt and you close your eyes. How does that affect your ability to imbibe and really feel that painting, particularly if you've never seen it before? Let's say you go to a movie and the theater is there and the screen is big, it's 3D, you got your glasses on, it's amazing, you can't wait to watch it, and you turn around and you spend the whole film looking to the back of the room. How does that impact your experience of that movie? But if somebody were walking by outside with a boombox on their shoulder playing Vivaldi, some people do that, it would color this conversation in a certain way. If another person walked down after that and they were playing Metallica, it would color this conversation differently. If they were playing Bob Marley, again, another spirit enters the room. Even though we're not here to see them, that's the funny thing about music. It gets in you. It is the only art form that can be consumed in a passive context. You can't get over it. You can't get under it. It just gets in you. The other powerful thing about music is you could go to the Louvre and I can be looking at one point painting and you could be looking at another painting and you could be looking at another one and you could be looking at a statue, a bust of such and such. But if 5 of us were in this room with our boomboxes listening to 5 different musics, we would be asked to leave or the rest of you would leave like that. Because the other thing about music is it must be consumed together. We can only listen to one song at a time. We have to do it together. So what does that mean? What role or what import does that have to do when we're thinking about the power of the arts for the future? Well, one, I've just articulated to you what I think is the present power of the art. But if I might, in 2 minutes, talk about economics for a minute, a lot of people are concerned about the future of our nation. Everybody's talking about, oh, the economy is terrible. People are speculating, oh, is America in decline? And some people are saying, no, we're not in decline. We're the best. But they don't really come with any statistics. We're the best. The best of what? Get your government hands off my Medicare. Okay, fair enough. We have the best health care. How? As compared to who? Well, we've got the best educational opportunities. Really, for whom? Where do we stand in the world rankings? Well, we've got the best, hardest working workers in the world. I will tell you as an immigrant, the most unpopular thing ever, that is absolutely false. There are people all over the world who work much harder for much less all the time. Not because they're better people, they don't have a choice. So we don't have the best workers in the world. So what makes us the best? Everybody's worried. The economy is terrible. All those good jobs went overseas. Yeah, well, that's true, but good jobs go overseas all the time. I mean, New York City used to be a textile manufacturing capital of the planet. You don't hear anyone wondering where'd all those good sewing jobs go. Right? Nobody's beefing about that. Man, I can't even get a job as a seamstress in New York. I really wish I could be in a factory making socks today. No, because those jobs left and we innovated and we created new things. And actually, that's been where we have historically been the strongest. We have been the innovators. We have been the people that created the new thing, the next great opportunity, the new wave of the future. And that's how we've grown as a society. We've also attracted the best minds from around the planet. So kids like me who grew up in a home with no running water get to come here, and it's like, oh my God, I can be in America. I want to go to Harvard. And whereas all the kids in my high school are like, yeah, whatever, I don't really care. I just want to have fun and I want to meet this chick. I'm like, I want to go to Harvard. Why? Because nobody in my family ever heard of any other school in America except Harvard. So that's the place to go. Right? Those of us who get a chance to come, we are all over it. These are the things that have made this country great. We were innovators. We were always on the cutting edge. We provide an opportunity for people to come and fulfill their dreams to be the best that they could be. Such that not only did we have great minds in this country, but the best from elsewhere would come to be a part of we. And this is where the problem lies fundamentally today. The issue is not that the good sewing jobs have left the country. The issue is we are no longer innovating at the level we need to in order to compete with a world where people are rising up and pulling themselves out of poverty and looking to us and saying, I want to live like them. And because we have, since 9/11, made it so hard for people who don't look like, smell like, talk like, pray like us to be here, to come here, to feel comfortable here, a lot of them are like, you know what, I don't want to go through the strip searches and the fingerprinting and the insults. I'm going to stay home. So a lot of those great minds that want to live like we do are staying where they are to figure out how they can do so. Everyone talks about China, the rise of China. China's the big competitor. Well, China's not out to get us. China's not out there trying to be like, how can we dominate the U.S.? China's got big issues of their own. China needs to create 1 million jobs per month just to keep on a par with their population growth. 1 million jobs a month. How do you deal with that? China also has a demographic problem. Because of their one-child policy, a lot of people gave up their little baby girls. So you got a generation of young men growing up. What happens if you have a generation of young men growing up with no jobs and no women? Just take a minute and think about it. They won't say it on The Economist. They won't mention it on CNN. But that's the reality. Those are the economic underpinnings of China's rise or fall. And that is why they will do whatever it takes to get more jobs. Because they got bigger problems than we do. So what is it that we need to do in the 21st century? What we need to do is recommit to building a culture of innovation in America. We do not need to wonder and worry about where the good carpentry or the good sewing jobs went. They were honorable fields, but we have all benefited from the advent of other things that we invented right here. We need to cultivate a culture of innovation, of creative thinking, of excellence and striving to expand our horizons and our imagination of what might be possible. And in the history of humankind, I would sit and argue with anyone on this point. There has been no more proven, more effective, more efficient, and more profound and more powerful method of teaching creativity and innovative thinking than the arts. You see, what we do has a value in its own sake, for its own sake. It has value in and of itself. But it is also the hidden gem in our society that could actually help us find a solution to some of the problems we are facing. We will never make things better, faster, cheaper here. That is not the way we even want to go. There will always be somebody in Bangalore. There will be somebody in Vietnam. There will be somebody in Lagos or Nairobi or Accra that will do it better, faster, cheaper. What we need to do here is do it bigger, better, brighter. And I believe that by cultivating that education in the arts, the value of the arts, by inculcating it in our children, whether they grow up to be dancers, whether they grow up to be baritone saxophone players or bankers, that they are thinking innovatively. The bankers not too innovatively. They already creative, causing enough problems. But everybody else, that is the direction that we should be focused in. Because whether this society will succeed or whether it will fail, the life of we the people will certainly show. I hope that life will be illuminated by artistry, and I thank you for all that you do. Thanks for hearing me.